All right, good morning. Awesome to see you guys. Hey, everybody got a name tag? You didn't get a name tag yet? None of you guys did? Come on, who's in charge of this section, Dina? Good grief. I guess we'll just wait. Here we go. Everybody over here got name tags? Yeah, okay, good. This section's on it. You guys got name tags? Good. You guys got name tags? Good. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Take your name tag. You're not going to write your name on it. I know, shocking. You're not going to write your name on it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think for a second. What is it that you most identify yourself with in life? Maybe whatever your primary identity is, like maybe your primary identity is to be the mom or dad of your kids or a specific kid's name. Maybe your primary identity is as a spouse, a husband and wife of so-and-so. Maybe your primary identity is your career or your title. I don't know. Those are just a few examples. What is your primary identity? You can be creative or have a little fun with it, but what is one of the things you see as one of your primary identities in life, in the world? And I want you to write it down. I'm just going to give you a minute. Write it down. You're going to take it off and put it on your chest, okay? You're going to wear it, all right? You're going to wear it through the service today, so think carefully and be careful, okay? So good. I'm going to give you a second. Write it down, and then we're going to do something with it here in just a second. Hey guys, y'all make me nervous back there. Y'all should be up here in the front where I can keep an eye on you. Yeah. Okay, everybody got something? When you're done, put it on your chest so I can see that you've got it done. Go ahead and put your sticker on your chest. That way I'll know. All right, I'm going to give you like a minute and a half, whatever it takes. You are going to, wait until I say go. Just like kindergarten again. Wait until I say go. You're going to get up and you're going to find 5 people to greet. Shake their hand and greet them by the identity written on their name tag. All right? Not by name. Find 5 people and you're going to shake their hand and greet them by the identity written on their name tag. 5 people and then return to your seat. Ready? Go. 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 He need another name tag? Does he need another tag? I thought that might happen. I don't have a name tag on, fat boy. I like it. All right, return to your seat when you've shaken 5 hands. We have some other things we want to get done today. All right, good job, good job. Okay, keep your name tags on, please, through the service. Towards the end, we're going to do something with this, so just keep them on. This is your identity for the next 25, 30 minutes, okay? All right, how many of you have ever done something really embarrassing in public or really stupid that you wish you could just crawl under like a rock and disappear? How many of you have ever done this before? Okay, I think we all have. For some reason, this happens to me frequently. I know that's hard to believe. I'll tell you one time when it happened. I'll give you one story that happened to me, and it's funny that my sister and brother-in-law are here because they were witnesses to this incident down in Georgia. It was when I was preaching down in Georgia at my first preaching ministry. I don't even remember what the message was about, but I remember there was a Sunday where I wanted to, and I've always kind of liked illusions and magic tricks, but I've never been able to do them. But I had it, and I was determined I was going to do a magic trick to open my sermon. And so you notice I don't do any magic now. Okay, that's a hint. But I was going to open, you've seen the trick before where they have the styrofoam cups and one of them has like a spike in it. And they smash down the cups, right? You've seen that illusion before. They identify. So this is what happened was I had a sheetrock screw, a 2-inch sheetrock screw placed inside a styrofoam cup. This is going to be uncomfortable for you, by the way. So I'm just warning you. Placed inside a styrofoam cup. And so I had a woman in our church come forward, and I said, okay, I want you to rearrange. I had watched some YouTube videos. I was clearly an expert. I don't know how this could go wrong. And so I had her rearrange. So I turned around, she rearranges the cups, and I come back and say, okay, are you sure this is the way you want them? You want to do it again? I'll turn around. She said, yeah, actually. And so I turned around, she rearranges them again. I come back. Okay, now I'm going to hit the 4 cups and smash them with my hand that don't have the screw, and I'm leaving the one that does. And so I get ready, and everybody's okay, and they're watching, and I get ready, and the very first cup I hit, I go, wham, hard as I could, and felt a screw go into my hand. And everybody in the congregation goes, and it was one of those where I looked at her, and the weird thing was it didn't really hurt. I think I was in shock, but it didn't really hurt, but I looked at her and I was just like, I hit the wrong one, didn't I? And her eyes were real big. And so I was like, okay, I'm determined that I'm just going to keep going, okay? So I'm like, okay, fine, let's go. So I have the screw. It didn't go all the way through, but it was in my hand, and this was a threaded screw. So I'm sitting there, and I try to start my sermon, but I can't get the screw out because it's threaded. This is the part that'll make you uncomfortable. So I start my sermon, and I'm preaching while I'm unthreading a screw from my hand. And I finally get it out. Cheryl had brought me some paper towels, and I held on to them. As soon as the sermon was over, I'm sweating profusely, by the way. I think it was more out of embarrassment than anything. As soon as the sermon was over, we took off and went to CVS for a tetanus shot. But it was it was a sermon that church will never forget. And I am so thankful that there was no video evidence of this, or I would be famous for all the wrong reasons. Okay, but have you ever done anything like that? Nope. Okay. Nobody can top that one. No, but you've done some things before, like maybe you've called somebody by the wrong name, right? Or maybe you've sent a text message to the wrong person, right? You ever done that before? Maybe somebody, you're like in a room and you see somebody across the room waving and you wave back only to realize they're waving at the person behind you, You've done that before. I've had a few like that. How many of you have ever had the experience of being in public with your kids and having them repeat something that they heard you say at home? Especially if it was to somebody that you were talking about. Or this happens, I find that this happens here more often than it did when I was in Georgia, is a situation where maybe you're sharing some gossip that you've heard with someone only to find out later that they were related to the person you were talking about. You've had that happen before. I mean, and things like this happen sometimes, and we have these things that happen that are embarrassing, that we're ashamed of, we want to crawl on a rock. Sometimes things happen in our lives that are maybe a little bit more serious too, that we really are ashamed of. Things like our past failures, our mistakes. Maybe we're ashamed of somebody. Maybe we're ashamed of somebody in our family and the way they're behaving or living their life. Maybe some of us today are ashamed of the way we look, our appearance, our body, or whatever it is. Maybe some of us here are just ashamed of who we are. And today, that's what I want us to think a little bit about is we're going into this series called Not Ashamed. And I'm going to talk a little bit more. There are several things that we're going to be getting at during this series, but over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about not ashamed. And I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of things in my life that I'm ashamed of. And I think you might be too, of mistakes I've made or regrets that I live with, things that I don't like about my appearance or my personality or my intelligence or ways that I've failed. Life can be, think about this, life can be pretty depressing when you're trying to live under this constant burden of shame, can't it? But this series, I want to share with you some good news. Some really good news. And I want us to go to Romans chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 to kick this off. The Apostle Paul's writing to the church, the Christians in Rome. And he shares in these couple of verses some really good news that I want you to think about. And it's going to be the basis for the next few weeks of this sermon series, Not Ashamed. And the words go like this. Paul says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith, from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith." Now guys, in these couple of verses, what Paul has to say changes everything for us. It can change everything in your life. When Paul says, "I am not ashamed of the gospel," it means so many things that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. And as we talk about what Paul meant when he said, "I am not ashamed of the gospel," and what that phrase really means, I want us to take two things away from that as we think about it. One, I want you to take away that you can break free from that burden of shame that plagues you. No matter where it is in your life, or what it is that you're ashamed of, you can break free of that. And the second thing that I want you to know, and I want us to walk away with, is I want us to walk away with a desire to share this very good news with the people that God puts in our path. We challenge you as a church, as followers of Jesus, to pray for one. To wake up every day with this prayer on your lips. God, put someone in my path today that I can share your love with somehow. And he's going to put, we just got done talking about all the different types of ones that he might put in your path. No matter who he puts in your path, you're praying this prayer. God, give me someone I can share your love with. And as you do, my prayer is as we go through this series of Not Ashamed, that you can come to a place where, man, you're going to be bold and have a desire to share with them that truth and whatever it is that God's laid on your heart about how you are not ashamed and how you can leave shame behind in your life. I want you to keep this in mind. Paul uses that word, "I am not ashamed of the gospel." And that word gospel is a pretty simple word. It means good news. Paul is saying, I am going to share with you good news. There's some really good news in your life. And over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about 4 different things, pieces of good news that we find in what Paul's saying here. Because Paul's saying, I've got good news. I've found good news in my life, and I'm proclaiming to you that there's good news for your life as well. And today we're going to start off by talking about the word identity. I am not ashamed of my identity. And that's the first piece that when Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, that I want you to lock on to. And I'm asking that question. Are you ashamed of your identity? Think about this. Your identity doesn't have to be about what you have been, but what about you are becoming. Your identity does not have to be about what you've been, but what you are becoming. And I know that's a struggle for a lot of us because we do have shame. We think about our past. We think about our failures, our mistakes, our regrets, and maybe even just more physical or maybe just situations that we find ourselves in. Maybe we're just ashamed of who we are. And the fact is this, that you don't have to be ashamed. Your identity does not have to be defined by your past or those things that you're ashamed of. Your identity can be defined by what you're becoming. And that's what we want to talk about. I want to ask you, is your identity good news? Is your identity, the way you look at yourself right now. And I'm not talking about, we were playing around when you wrote on the cards, but I want you to think really. Your identity, is it good news, or is it something you're ashamed of, that you're trying to run from, that you're trying to constantly hide, that's a burden that just weighs down on you? That's what I want us to talk about today. We're gonna look over, and I'm asking the question today, what is so good about my identity? And I think some of you probably struggle with that. What is so good about my identity? Look with me over in Romans chapter 8. I'm going to jump ahead a few chapters where Paul's writing still to the Roman Christians. And that was one of my favorite passages in all the Bible because of the way Paul just kind of lays it out here clearly. And let's look at this together and see what Paul has to say here in Romans 8, starting in verse 14. He says, "For those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory." Listen, in the Old Testament, if you want to look back and see what's he talking about, being children of God and being adopted to sonship. You see, in the Old Testament, God's people were the descendants of Abraham, the Israelites. That is where God's story began. But the good news, gospel, is that that's not where the story ends. Jesus came to show us that his story is not just about the Israelites. It is not just about them. It's about the fact that we can all become children of God. You see, the Israelites were God's natural born children. The rest of us get to become his adopted children through Jesus and what he did on the cross. And that's where I want us to start. You see, when we choose to follow Jesus, we take on a new identity. We become adopted children of God. Look over in Galatians chapter 3 with me, verses 26 through 29. Paul is writing here again, and he's talking a little bit more about this whole concept of becoming children of God and what it means. He says, "So in Christ Jesus, you are children of God through faith. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise." And guys, that's really good news. And I want us to think about it. That's gospel. It's good news for all of us. And there are three things about our identity. When this becomes something we take hold of, when we decide, I want to take hold of this identity of covering myself with Christ. And when I take that on, I want to share with you three things that make my identity, that make your identity really good news. Even if you walked in here today feeling really bad about who you are and where you've been and what you've done. The first one is this: as a child of God, I have a Father. Now write that down in your bulletin if you want. As a child of God, I have a Father. That's really good news. Now think about this for a second. I know that not everyone in this room had the benefit of a great dad. I understand that. I have no idea what most of your relationships with your dad is or was like. I don't know if you look at that relationship as a positive thing or a negative thing. But to have God as a father is awesome. I want to ask you, what makes a good father? I mean, if we were going to sit here and make a list of some things that make a good father, what would be on that list? I'm going to share with you a few things on my list. I wrote down, these are some things that make a good father. A good father takes care of our needs as children, right? That's what a good father teaches you the truth about how to survive in this world. A good father sets the standard for the family. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. A good father disciplines you in a way that helps you mature and begin better living by those standards that have been set. A good father can be trusted because you know that they're wise, they have experience, and they know things you don't know, and they've lived through things you haven't experienced yet. A good father, you can trust them because you know that they love you and they want the best for you, and they will do anything for you and will never harm you. Can we agree that that's a pretty good list of a good father? Those are some things that we want. Listen, when you become a child of God, you take on a new identity. You put on Christ, and you put on this identity as a child of God. And when you do, you have a good father in your life, no matter what your experience with your earthly father was like. That list I just described, and even more, describes God as our Father. As a child of God, He meets all of these characteristics of a good father in your life. And guys, that's very good news. I don't know if who needed to hear that today, but that's good news. That's gospel. The second thing I want to give you is, as a child of God, when you take hold of this new identity, you have a family. Now, like with the Father, I want us to acknowledge that no family is perfect, right? True? I mean, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. We're going to experience this, right? Yeah. No family is perfect, but it sure is good to know that you have a family that you can turn to when you're struggling, when you just need to know that somebody cares. It's good to know that you're not alone. God, I know there are a lot of people, and it may describe some of you in here today, who are lonely. You don't have a family, or maybe you're estranged from your family for some reason. Listen, whether you have a great family or whether you find yourself feeling all alone in the world right now, when you take on the identity as a child of God, you have a family. Now, granted, we all have parts of our family that we're ashamed of sometimes. As a child of God, the church becomes your family. We become part of your family, not just the local, not just New Hope locally, but you're part of a body of believers around the world. We're part of a family together, and that's all of us. But let's be honest, there are no perfect people. There are no perfect families. There are no perfect churches. And that's just reality, and we know that. You know, when you're a part of a church family, just like your earthly family, that we have people that we disagree with. Well, sometimes we have people we don't even like very much, right? I mean, not here, but most places that would be true. You know, we have people, we don't always like the decisions that are made by those leading the family. Sometimes someone in the family might hurt us or do harm somehow. And that's true in our earthly families, and it's true through the church sometimes too. But it sure is good to know, even though there are no perfect families, it sure is good to know that you have a family here that loves you and wants to encourage you and wants to be there for you when things get tough and wants to celebrate with you when things are good. I know New Hope's not a perfect church, but I do believe we have a great family here. We have a family that wants to encourage each other and support each other and celebrate with each other. Man, that's good news. That's a part of your identity as a child of God, and that's good news. That's gospel. The third piece that I want to share with you today is, as a child of God, I have an inheritance. As a child of God, I have an inheritance. Back in Romans 8, that passage that we read a few minutes ago, the passage says that once we take on the identity as children of God, we become heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. I wonder what it would be like. Wouldn't it be cool to know that, like, you have that you're the sole heir of a wealthy family member? Wouldn't that be kind of cool to know that one day, that, not that you want anything bad to happen or you're going to try to make it happen, but in the course of things, one day you're going to be financially set and secure, right? That you won't have to worry about money how cool would that be? To have that kind of security. I think who doesn't dream of getting that letter in the mail? You have someone in Austria who passed away and left you $8 million. We know that's not going to happen, but how cool would it be to have that kind of security? But I want you to think about this. Once you take on the identity as a child of God, you become an heir to the creator of the universe. You become heir to the owner of everything. You become heir to an eternity of riches in heaven. No matter how difficult things get in this life, you can wake up every morning and you can go to bed every night knowing that you are heir to the King of Kings, God Almighty. How awesome is that? That's good news, isn't it? That's gospel. When Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, a piece of what he's saying is I am not ashamed of my identity. Maybe I've done things I regret. Maybe I've made mistakes. Yeah, I've got a past. But I am not ashamed of who I am. I have clothed myself with Christ. I am a child of God. And because of that, I have a father, I have a family, and I am heir to the King of Kings. That's gospel. That's good news. You see, as children of God, we have nothing to be ashamed of. As a matter of fact, the fact that we are children of God means that we have reason to celebrate. And we have a joy that simply cannot be squashed by the pain and struggles of this world. Not only that, we get to share this good news with anybody and everyone, and that is exactly what our Father wants. He wants us to invite everyone on this planet to become a part of this family. And man, that's good news, not just for us. That's good news for everybody. And He wants us to talk about that. I want the section leaders, if you will hand out the other stickers now. They're getting ready to pass around some stickers. And on these stickers, they say, simply, I am a child of God. Now, I want to just simply ask you for a second to think about it. Have you clothed yourself with Christ? Have you taken on a new identity? Can you walk out of here today, no matter how you walked in, whatever kind of shame you walked in with, can you walk out of here saying, I am not ashamed of the gospel because I have a father, I have a family, I am heir to the King. And because of that, that's gospel, that's good news. And if that's true, if you can say that today, I am a child of God, and I don't doubt it, I know it. I know that He has adopted me, and I am His child. I want you to take that sticker, and I want you to put it right on top of the identity that you wrote down earlier. I want you to walk out of here today, no matter what identity you walked in with today. I want you to walk out today with your primary identity, saying, I am a child of God. Now, there might be some of you in here saying, I'm not so sure. I don't know if I'm a child of God. I'm afraid I've fallen short. I've never really submitted myself to Him. Or maybe you're saying, I don't even know how to do that. How do I become a child of God? I'm telling you, you can walk out of here today with an identity that is very good. You can. You can make that choice today. You can clothe yourself with Christ today. And you can walk out of this place with a new identity that you will never have to be ashamed of again. Here in a few minutes, after we share in communion together, we're going to offer an invitation. And that invitation today is a call to you. If you walked in here today not being covered by Christ, not without that identity, we're going to issue a call today that says you can change it. Don't leave here today until you do. That's the call. Now, go ahead. If you're ready and you've got this sticker, put it right on over that identity. And you know that you're going to walk out of here today as a child of God. Awesome. Walk out of here and know that you have nothing to be ashamed of. But if there's some things you need to address, let's not leave until we do that. Listen, I mentioned at the very beginning of the service, this is our Faith Promise Month. Okay, I want to just briefly tell you a little bit about what Faith Promise is all about. Faith Promise, every year we spend a little bit of time focusing on mission. As a church, think about this. We're limited on our impact, our ability to impact the world, to take the gospel everywhere, right? We can do a great job of trying to reach Crawfordsville in Montgomery County, but we can't reach everybody. We don't have the manpower and the resources. But you know what? There are organizations that do. There are organizations right here in Montgomery County that are reaching people groups that we don't, that we can't maybe. There are people and organizations around the state of Indiana reaching students, reaching people in Merrillville, Indiana, in different places, in the camp, and reaching people and having an impact on people in ways that we can't just sitting right here in this building. There are people all over the United States and in New England planting churches. And we're not there with them, but they're spreading the gospel. And there are people all over the world doing the same thing. And we can't be in all those places all the time. But one thing we can do is we can say, I am not ashamed of the gospel, and I want to do everything I can by supporting. And as a church, we support mission organizations all over the state, country, and all over the world that are trying to spread the gospel in places we can't physically go or might be difficult for us to physically go. And so what we do is we send resources out, and we challenge our church every year to give, to make a pledge called a faith promise. I am pledging to give in the next year above and beyond my regular giving to the church in such a way that I can be a part of spreading the gospel, in a way that I can say I am not ashamed of the gospel, and I want to do everything I can. Even if I can't physically go, I can support it somehow. That's what Faith Promise is. And we just challenge you to prayerfully consider it. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be presenting some of the ministries that we support all around the world, and giving you a chance to hear about those ministries, to see about the things they do, and to make a decision about how God may be laying it on your heart to support those ministries. Some of those ministries will be represented at booths out in the lobby. You can stop by and read about them and see them. They're on the pictures on the wall going out. You can read about those ministries. Next Sunday and the Sunday after, we're going to have representatives from a lot of these ministries here, and we're going to get a chance to hear a little bit about their story, both in the service and in our Sunday school hour. They'll be sharing over in the gym, so I'd encourage you to come and be a part of that, to hear what's happening outside of this building, outside of this community, and spreading the gospel. And that's what we're going to talk a lot more about Faith Promise over the next few weeks, but that's what this is all about. Today, I want to acknowledge that we do have one ministry I know of with us today, Jeff Johnson from Pam's Promise. Where's Jeff? Right here. There you are, Jeff. Jeff from Pam's Promise is here today. Man, please take some time to talk to Jeff. Do you guys have a booth out in the lobby? Okay. I mean, I'm sure you'll be out there at the end of the service, and if you want to take a chance to talk to him, they're a ministry happening right here in Montgomery County, having an impact on people that as a church we may not ever have a chance to. Man, what an awesome opportunity it is for us to support them and encourage them. So thank you for what you do and for being here today. Yeah, come on, let's acknowledge that. Yeah. I just want to end up this way. I want to say, man, we are not ashamed of the gospel, whether we're talking about what we preach and teach here as a church or where we're going to go with it or what we're going to support and how we're going to take it out of here. Next week, I want to take this a little further. Another piece that we're not ashamed of. When Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, I want to talk about how we're not ashamed of taking a stand on biblical standards. We're going to talk about that next week, and that's a big deal in this world today. And so I hope you'll come back next week and hear that message. But today, we are going to pause and take a time of communion together. An opportunity for us to stop and think about, why is it we get to be a part of this story? How is it we came to be children of God? Because of what Jesus did on the cross for us, that sacrifice he made. By saying, I am not content to just let mankind fall away in rebellion. I want to give them a chance to be redeemed and covered by me, to take on a new identity. That's what Jesus did on the cross. That's an opportunity you have to take hold of today. Let's remember it. If you are already a child of God and you've put that on your shirt today, let's take communion and reflect on and celebrate the fact that we are children of God. If you're not, If you're not sure about that, man, during this time of communion, reflect on how Jesus wants you, is calling you, and desires to have you be his child too. And what an awesome call that is. Let's pray together and let's share in communion together over these things. Father, thank you for this day and our opportunity to hear your word, to worship and to celebrate, to reflect on ministry happening even outside these walls. And we got more than anything else, the fact that we are children of God because of what you did on the cross. Thank you. Let us leave here today knowing that our identity as children of God is all because of what Jesus did. And we thank you for that. We love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.